Hi there, welcome to the Raven's Call. I'm Eric Wordweaver Sjerven, Goldie of the Ridgar folk here in East Texas. I'd like to welcome you to the show. This is a show where I ramble on about different heathen-related subjects, just kind of whatever strikes my fancy at the time. So let's take care of some housekeeping stuff. If you guys like the videos, if you enjoy what I do here and what others like me do, please subscribe down below, ding the bell so you stay up to date on everything, and hit like on the videos. The more you interact with my videos, the more like them you will see in your feed. So this is a big milestone, guys. I don't know if you guys have been following it, but I broke 1,000 subscribers. It's crazy. I never would have thought when I started this thing like a year and a half ago that I would ever break 1,000 subscribers. You know, a simple show where I ramble on about heathen stuff. A lot of it intro heathen stuff, some of it more advanced. One of the ones that I plan to do here in the near future hopefully will be more of the kind of out there woo, not necessarily the woo-woo side of things, more on the cosmology side of things, but my own unique kind of take on it. And so, you know, well, we'll see. But anyway, I mean, this show I never really thought would take off like this. So thank you guys. Thank everybody who watches the videos, everybody who takes time to comment, to thumb up, to just subscribe. You guys are awesome. And I cannot express enough how much I appreciate it and how much I really enjoy seeing this community build up and interacting with you guys. There's some really cool folks that interact both on the Facebook page and in the comments on YouTube. A little bit on my Saraha, things like that. And it's just cool. It's neat. It's incredible. There's some awesome folks. So to all of you, thank you. May the gods bless you and may your ancestors smile on you. Now, because we broke 1,000 subscribers, I'm toying with the idea of doing some kind of a giveaway. I will update on the Facebook page and maybe a little short extra video kind of popped up in there somewhere with some details on how to enter it. How to enter it for the giveaway. And I'm not going to say any details just yet because I haven't worked it all out yet, but I feel like 1,000 subscribers is definitely a milestone that's worthy of something special. So I'm going to see about what I can work up there, look at my supplies and see, maybe do a little crafting thing and try and get that out there for you guys in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So be watching for that. I'll have some details on that hopefully pretty soon. Something I'm going to turn my attention to. So, real quick interjection here, guys. This is a picture of the Nidstang, which we're about to do the video on. I wanted to throw it in here so you guys could have a visual on it. This one's taken from Saxo Grammaticus. And I also wanted to say that I know I trip over Egil Skallagrimsson's name in this video quite a bit, so I'm just letting you know I do know how to say his name. Anyway, here we go. On to the video. Now, on to today's subject, okay? Now, I like to talk about weird things, out there things, and stuff that maybe that's there in heathenry but doesn't necessarily get talked about a whole lot for various and sundry reasons. It's just stuff that catches my eye, and if I notice that people haven't been talking about it, I like to bring it up on the channel. It's also just kind of whatever strikes my fancy at the time. And something I haven't really delved into lately. I talked about it a little bit in my curses video, but at least I think I did. I've done 72. So I've done a lot of videos and can't always keep track of what I've talked about and what I haven't. But anyway, the Nidstang, or the neathing pole, the nothing pole. And this is something that is a curse from largely attested in old Icelandic sources, but it's also in mainland Scandinavia as well, as far as I've seen. I haven't delved too much into the sources to see how much it branches off into like mainland Europe or anything like that, but I do know from the Scandinavian sources what it is, how it was used, and that, surprisingly, it's still used today. So that was something that kind of struck me as surprising, yet in a lot of ways awesome. So here's the deal on what a neathing pole is, a Nidstang. And hopefully I will remember to go in and put a definition of the Nidstang, or not definition, but at least the word down here in the bottom somewhere. So it's my intention. We'll see if I remember to do that in post. The Nidstang is a pole, literally a staff, that is set up to curse another individual. The best example that I've come up with on this is from Egil Skallagrimsson's saga, where he erects a pole and directs it towards the village where King Eric and Queen Gunhild are in reign, And he curses them, but more specifically, he curses the land around them. And I'm going to come back to that here in a minute because I want to use that example kind of as our how-to on this. Not that I'm trying to do a how-to, but just this is how it works. Okay. Now, a neidstong is a pole that's erected, and it's usually just a staff of some kind. It's not like a huge maypole kind of thing. It's not, a landscaping timber. It's a pole, and this pole is frequently carved with runes to document the curse. And the curse it follows a simple kind of formula. It sets out the goal of the curse and what needs to be done in order to achieve that goal, and then it charges someone with the doing of that. Now this formula is carved onto the pole, and atop the pole is placed a freshly cleaved horse's head frequently. I've actually seen it using other animals as well, but the sagas specifically reference a horse's head. And this horse's head is pointed at the residence or location of the individual who is being cursed by this. There's also some attestations that the skin of the horse was taken and then draped kind of like a cape behind the head and down the pole, giving it kind of a frame. The pole, of course, is buried into the ground, and it is pointed at the target of the curse while the curse is spoken aloud, preferably in front of witnesses. It carries little weight if it is not declared in front of witnesses. That binds the weird of everyone involved, much like Sumble would. Everybody that's viewing it, their weird is then tied up in it, and they bear witness to this curse. And so they're going to be watching for the results of said curse as well. So let's talk a little bit about that formula. Okay, that formula being, in the case of Egil Skallagrimsson's, he identifies King Eric and Queen Gunhild for their transgressions, and he wishes to see them cast out. So he sets up the target and the means by which is that they will be cast out. And then he charges the Vatir of the land spirits, that they will not rest and they will not find their way home until Eric and the Queen are cast out. Now, the way this obviously works is that the curse is directed towards the King and the Queen, but it is done by proxy against the Vatir themselves. Charges the Vatir so that they themselves are cursed until they lift the curse by banishing Eric and Gunhild. So the goal here is that the Vatir will then make the land inhospitable to the King and Queen and will drive them away. There's a lot of ways that can play out. Starvation, bad turn of luck, cutting them off from supply chains, things like that. And a lot of different ways, hauntings, a lot of different ways that the Vatir can influence an individual to drive them away from an area. Now, as in dealing with any kind of a curse, it's obviously the transgressed individual who is taking some kind of act of vengeance or seeking compensation for for whatever that initial transgression was. There's another reference in the Vatnsdæla saga of, again, a need pole being erected and directed towards an individual. Again, I believe it was Horsehead on that one as well. Now, some actual modern representations of the Neath pole. I'd have to go back and look at the sources again, but I've read recently about, like 2006, a guy in Iceland erected a Nidstang and directed it towards his neighbor, saying that he would not rest until the neighbor was either killed or outlawed or driven away. And actually ended up having charges brought against him for making a death threat against this individual because of the Nidstang. So, I mean, that was in 2006. This is still observed in Iceland. Doesn't necessarily mean that it was, honored. I don't know how all of that played out. And the reason that he erected this neidstong towards this individual is because that individual ran over his puppy. So a little John Wick a la Iceland action going on there. So it's a fascinating thing that the neidstong still exists, and that the power of it continues to be a thing. The power of the neidstong is in that it is a totem. It is a totem that is charged with psychic energy and is a declaration of intent. The rune carving, or it mentions runes specifically in the Egil Skallagrimsson version of the Nidstang, and that is something that I've seen as a fair constant in the representations that I've seen in literature and in references. The guy with the puppy actually, I think, attached a note to the Nidstang, and he used, I want to say, a cow's head on top of it. So I mean, it was obviously not still the horse's head as attested in literature, but it is something, a sacrificed animal, and the sacrificed animal is sacrificed for that purpose. The idea being that you are charging this curse with the life energy of the sacrifice. I do not know if there's some kind of ritual element tying to the gods or anything like that like before the Nidstang itself is erected. I doubt it, largely because if you look at religious versus magical workings deal largely with the mundane world, with the profane world, interacting with energies between the spiritual world and the physical world, and do not necessarily interact largely with the divine. You get into the religious elements on that of interaction with the sacred, beseeching the sacred for special boons, gifts, vengeance. There are attestations of individuals calling upon the gods or familial gods, as in some of the sagas. I think in Heimskringla, one of the errant kings calls upon some ancestral deities to fight alongside him in war. And these, I'm not so much certain that these are goddesses per se, as much as they are powerful Disir of his line, because the Disir themselves are somewhat deified, as in the ancestral worship element. So they could be viewed like household gods, familial gods, as in they are the Disir. Got to keep in mind, most of the literature that's written down was not written down by polytheists in the day that they were actually utilized. They're attestations and stories that were passed down and then written down largely by monotheists or atheists later on. Most of the stuff that we have actually comes from Christian sources that were writing down the sagas and the lore, everything for preservation purposes. A lot of it's Snorri, things like that. I believe Heimskringla is one of Snorri's works. I have to go back and check on that. But they don't necessarily fully grasp how the arch-heathens viewed gods and goddesses versus the spiritual world. Plus, it comes through their own lens of interpretation. So what they see as calling upon, familial gods could simply be these individuals calling upon ancestral Disir, strong, powerful women of their line who came and lent magical aid in the time of battle, turning the weather and things like that, casting hail and whatnot. So it's fascinating stuff, but it varies from the application of the Nidstang, as I've seen, in that the Nidstang seems to be a manipulation of Weird on Midgard, in this plane of existence and reality. And the essence is that it causes a disruption, troubled waters in the Well of Weird around an area that, in order to fix the unrest caused by this offensive totem that has been erected, in order to calm those waters, you have to remove whatever was the cause of the curse in the first place. So in the instance of the gentleman in Iceland with his dog, obviously he's upset about the animal, and so he casts this Nidstang curse, and he, instead of targeting the Vaetier with casting out this individual or targeting the surrounding people, he charges himself with it and causes himself unrest until the offending party has been eliminated or taken out of society, brandished an outlaw, etc., etc. So, all dealing in the mundane. So, ultimately, the sacrificial element that goes along with the Nidstang is tied, I think, to the profane world as opposed to trying to tie to the sacred. I don't have anything really that ties it to the sacred that I've seen. Doesn't mean that there aren't sources that exist, possibly even in Scandinavian or Germanic languages that I don't necessarily have access to, because I don't speak those languages, at least not really. Jeg snakker litt norsk, but that's all nynorsk. It's all new Norwegian. That means I speak a little Norwegian, but it's all modern Norwegian. I don't really speak any of the old Norse. I'd love to learn, but I just haven't. So a few words here and there, but not enough to actually do anything with. So there's some great sources out there, though, if you guys do want to learn Old Norse. There's some fantastic sources, and a lot of people doing some really good work in that realm. So I highly recommend going and checking out Jackson Crawford. I blanked on his name. Jackson Crawford stuff, because he does some absolutely fantastic stuff. He's the head of Old Norse Studies. I think he's in Boulder, Colorado now. He moves around a bit, and I haven't watched some of his more recent stuff, so I don't know if he's still there and whatnot. But very, very prolific. Guy knows his stuff, does a lot of translations of the Havamal and Poetic Edda, and I think he's done Ragnar Saga and stuff like that. So, great guy, knows his stuff. Check him out. Now, the Nidstang, of course, means the nothing pole, or the needing, which is a term that is applied to someone who is viewed as nothing, worthless, And we talked about the fact that it causes unrest. The guy that in Iceland causes the unrest in himself, that he may not rest until he has completed the task necessary to drive away the offending party. But he still casts the title of nothing upon this individual. And you got to keep in mind that arch-heathen times, society was everything. It's very tribal-based, very, very community-based, especially the Icelandic side of things. And so to say that someone is a nothing, to take away their identity as something, is to say that this person has no worth to the society. They are worthless. And worth, as we've talked about in the channel before, you can go back and look at my worth versus integrity video to kind of get a rough rundown on how I view some rudimentary elements of worth. To take away, to strip away someone's worth was one of the most damning curses that they could put on someone. To say that you have no worth to society because of what you've done, again, harkens back to the whole we are our deeds, our place in society, which was necessary for survival, as well as for religious and spiritual elements. That presence in society was necessary for gaining full access to, luck and the gods and everything like that. Looking at all of these things, to cut that away from someone was to cut them out of that social construct entirely and to cast them out, kind of like an outlaw. A lot of the dealings with outlaws, the outlawry, is that they are, again, cast out of society, cut out, and thrown away. They have no place in society. They are needings. They are wolves in the wilds. They're not part of society. And so cutting them off means that they have no rights within society and that they have no place there. Similarly, like with outlaws, like I've touched before in outlaws, an outlaw could be killed without incurring the wergild, or the man price for the killing, the monetary compensation that was assigned to the life of a man if he was killed unjustly, or a wrongful death kind of thing. So to cast someone out with a Neith pole is to declare them as outlaw to, I see this person as an outlaw and I am going to pitch a fit until everybody else does too. Keep that in mind, because it is very much a personal thing. This is driven from an individual's personal stance, and it is a wronged individual who is seeking retribution, who is seeking revenge. And so that is the driving force behind that. The sacrifice, like we talked about before, uses the life energy from the animal that has been sacrificed and dedicates it to this purpose, charges this totem. The remains are used to transfer that to the totem itself and to tie that animal spirit to the curse as kind of fuel and to drive it forward. Now, as far as canceling out the curse, there's not a whole lot of references that I have come across as of yet. You guys are welcome to shoot me any kind of sources or anything that you have of people who have somehow countered a Nidstang, whether that be the destruction of the Nidstang or if there was some kind of consequence to the destruction of said Nidstang, such as incurring a curse themselves. I don't know. Usually it doesn't much go beyond that the Nidstang was erected and typically the results of the Nidstang were played out. So the things that happen in sagas are usually the things of note. Those are the things that are recorded. So a failed Nidstang is not something that typically would work its way into a saga unless for some reason it was like a shameful incident for the individual putting up the Nidstang, or it was essential in the story and the narrative that was going along and telling this individual saga. So in Egil's saga, that it was all about Egil's power with the runes, Egil's, him being something of an outcast himself. He falls into the kind of outlaw sagas in that, he's... read the saga. It's a wonderful saga. Anyway, but that's what this is about. This is about him seeking retribution against Eric and his wife. And so the Nidstang is the totem and the means by which he goes about this particular aspect of all of that. It's simply a tool along the way. Now, there obviously, one of the interesting things that I find about the Nidstang is that the Nidstang itself doesn't necessarily do the work of the curse. It is an offensive totem that is erected that causes strife and disruption in the weird of the area that causes the charged individuals to seek to eliminate that dissonance and return homeostasis. They want to go back to normal. They want things to settle out and be peaceful. In order to do that, they have to remove this thorn in the landscape. And they can't remove the thorn until they remove what caused the thorn to be there in the first place. So it's a fascinating thing. And there's even more modern sources. Like, trying to think, there was I want to say a Norwegian politician who used Nidstangs to protest an upcoming election. I don't know a whole lot of details about it. It was referenced in one of the articles that I looked at. And, this particular politician erected these Nidstang in order to not necessarily effect the curse, but definitely to draw attention to the problems that they had, but essentially doing the same thing, causing unrest in the voting population who see this and want it to go away. And so they, in order to make it go away, either have to get rid of the individual who's doing the Nidstang or complete the curse of the Nidstang and run counter to the election that they were, that the Nidstang were erected against in the first place. So it's an interesting thing. And this is a cool thing in that it is an old world piece of magic that still exists today in modern application. I have seen references to, of course, the cow's head, the horse head, cod, fish. I have heard of fish being used as a topper for the Nidstang. Essentially, drawing away from the horse in old Scandinavian lore and broadening that to a generalized animal sacrifice. I do not know if that is something that has just been diluted over the years so that people are... maybe there was a reason the horse was used initially, because the horse was seen as sacred in the olden days. If you look at Ravenkel's Freysgård, that particular saga, that whole thing, the feud, started out because of a horse that was dedicated to Frey. And it was said that, any that rode the horse would then be, they would have to be killed because this was a sacred horse dedicated to Frey. And someone ended up having to ride the horse. And that was for a good reason. It was a life and death kind of, I have to ride a horse in order to save this person, and this is the only one available, so he rides the horse. And Ravenkel, of course, doesn't want to do this, but because of his pact with Frey, has to, because he's entered into this oath, this arrangement. And so it starts a feud that lasts for quite some time. And so, that's... The horse itself was seen as sacred. That was the whole point of that little side anecdote. The horse was seen as sacred, and as such, the use of the horse in a neidstong needs to be taken note of. I'm not sure exactly why, per se, a horse would be necessary. From a mechanical point, in the metaphysical aspect, any sacrifice should be sufficient. Simply because of the function that it plays in the creation of the totem, as far as I can see. Not that I'm advocating that by any means. I'm simply talking from a historical point and a fascination in how the metaphysics of this particular magical totem work. So please don't say that I'm saying go out and kill an animal and erect a neidstong. I don't think that's necessary in today's society, because this is what I was going to talk about a little bit in branching off from all of that. I think there are other ways to handle a neidstong. A neidstong itself bases off of the whole shame culture element of arch-heathen times. We've talked before on the channel about shame culture versus guilt culture, and Western society largely now is based on guilt culture, as is perpetuated by some of the major theological threads that run through westernized culture, even in the secular domain. It is fueled by largely the influence of the church in Western society post-conversion. So there was a transference from shame culture to guilt culture, and so things like a neidstong don't necessarily carry the same cultural context that they would have in a shame-based culture, because what you are essentially doing is you are assigning shame on this individual, and you are shaming the rest of the world to deal with this. It's like, look, this is BS, and you guys should be ashamed of yourselves for letting this happen. And because of that, I am going to rile all of this up until you do something about it and we do something right. In the whole action versus inaction heathen ethics element, the individual who is erecting the neidstong is the only one who sees himself as actually doing something to right the wrong. Now, again, you get into, who's really in the right on this. This is all based off the individual's perception. But you got to keep in mind, society was different back then, and the focuses were different. He felt justified in doing this and erected a magical totem that will effect this. Now, I'm sure there have been instances where neidstong have been erroneously erected in order to, to bring about a vengeance against a perceived slight that was misinterpreted from the get-go. I'm sure there have been those instances because we're human and we make mistakes. I find it hard to believe that every neidstong that's ever been erected was done so rightfully and righteously. There have probably been a number of missteps, probably most of them if you really got to the bottom of what all was going on. But I don't have hard evidence on that, so all I've got are the few instances mentioned in the sagas and the few in the articles that I have come across where it has been used in recent times. So you got to think, if it's still being used today, it has been used throughout the centuries, and carries with it, all the weight of the uses and I'm sure there have been some missteps along the way. So anyway, application in the modern day, though, I mean, if you think about what this does, essentially creates dissonance in a society for the purpose of righting a wrong. And this, again, plays into that shame culture like we were talking about before. So there are things that can be done. If you look at some of the lore, you will run into, like Egil himself is well known to do, writing poetry that is scathing and shaming of the individual that is the target of the poem. This survives in multiple cultures. I mean, if you look at Chaucer, Chaucer's well known for doing this. He to steal a line from A Knight's Tale, which I find to be a fun movie, not historically accurate in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but I love that movie for just funness. Anyway, the character Chaucer in there threatens to eviscerate someone in prose, basically to caricaturize them and to bring shame upon them for having taken advantage of him. But the author, the actual author, Chaucer, was well known for having done this, as many authors have done throughout the ages. Shakespeare, a lot of authors have done it on a societal level as a whole. Satire is a thing for a reason. And all of this comes back to the neidstong, in that they come from a similar source. You are talking about, like, for instance, someone who writes a book that is a scathing satire of a societal problem. They are erecting a totem that is, in a lot of ways, even more powerful than the neidstong, that causes dissonance in society and causes them to try to right this wrong. You see a lot of public speakers that will utilize the power of words to do this. You know, they charge people, cause dissonance, and create turmoil so that these people will right the wrong. And that element is pervasive across cultures. You see it in history all throughout. And essentially, it is the same basic premise as the neidstong. So I find it interesting only in a corollary element, not necessarily saying that this is the same as utilizing a neidstong, but it is fascinating nonetheless to look at the correlations and to see how things play out. So anyway, there's a lot of different ways, poetry, articles, artwork, things like that, that a person can identify a wrong, charge someone with righting the wrong, and developing turmoil or dissonance as an impetus for this person, to the charged individual, to then go against whoever has caused the initial wrong. So the formula translates. The form of the totem simply is what shifts. It can be poetry, it can be books, it can be videos, it can be a speech, it can be artwork, it can be a physical totem, necklaces, amulets, things like that, cursed objects. Because essentially that's what it boils down to. Again, it's a curse. And this is like the second video that I've done on curses per se. But I find the neidstong to be particularly interesting simply because of its cultural context and how this particular curse manifests itself. So I'm going to cut off there because we've been going for about a half hour, but I'm very interested to hear kind of what you guys have to say about the neidstong and its application in history, and maybe even some more sources than what I found of modern applications of the neidstong. Maybe even correlations that you yourself have seen in the modern day. So please jump in the comments, join me on Facebook at Word-Weaver Productions, and join the conversation. Let us know what you see. What kind of sources have you come across? I would love to hear it, and I would love to see what you guys have got, rolling around in your heads and what your experiences have been. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Again, 1,000 subscribers. Wow, I can't even express. It's still sinking in. I can't even, really. It's just wow. So thank you all. I hope the channel continues to be something that you're interested in, or at least is entertaining. I know it's just me rambling on about my ways and the way that I see the world, but hey, that's why you're here. So hope it continues to be something you like. Thank you guys for your support, for the ideas, because a lot of my videos have come from viewer requests or from viewer instigated ideas. And so keep that coming. Keep feeding me with ideas or questions or whatever, and light my mind fire, and I will run with it and turn it into something. So thank you guys. Hail. May your ancestors smile on you. See if we can get this lined up right. Play with the camera, because that's what we do. There we go. My dorky Dorsey. Broom's gone. Ha! It's over there. Okay. So we're going to try to talk about the Nidstang a little bit, because it interests me. Okay? I've got some interesting stuff on it. So let's see what we can do. Yeah. Okay. Coffee, nectar of the gods. And let's try this. Bouncer, bouncer. Check it out. Ready? And 3, 2, 1. Let's jam. Hi there. Welcome to the Raven's Call. I'm Eric Wordweaver Sjerven, Goathie of the Ridgar folk here in East Texas, and I am... That's a shoddy intro. Let's try it again. One more time. And 3, 2, 1. Let's jam. So, essentially, what we see in Egil Skallagrimsson's one, well, hold on, pause. We're going to go back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, pause. I lost my train of thought. Dang it. I really thought I was going to get this done in one go. Aside from the whole snafu with the intro and everything. But nope. Had to pause anyway. Get my thoughts back around me. Talking about language. Anyway. I'm sure there are instances where neidstong have been erroneously erected. Pause. I love it when I just run over a word. Erected. Goober. All right.